Thursday, January 8th. I'm Adam Walsh, and this is The Signal. Today on the show, Donald Trump, Venezuela, Greenland, imperialism, the latest on the Middle East, Prime Minister Mark Carney, and more, maybe. A look at geopolitics, how it's affecting us, just the state of the world, folks. Yeah, like I said in the show promo that aired this morning, and I think yesterday and on the go, that list there that I riddled off, and there's more, it almost felt like I was writing the lyrics for Billy Joel's We Didn't Start the Fire 2.0, right? Because it, gosh, there's a lot going on, and we're taking... We're licking our fingers, putting up in the wind, and seeing which way the wind is blowing here today on the Signal with just a small topic, which I like to call our State of the World show. We do it about four times per year. So for you today, look, the lines are open. With everything going on, how do you think it's going to impact us? Or just what are you thinking about? What are you kind of following, and whether it's wanting to know more about or just perhaps it's surprise, you name it, the lines are open, 709-722-7111, 1-800-563-8255. Text us, 709-327-8206, The Signal at cbc.ca. Lucian Ashworth is back, international relations prof at Memorial University. Justin Fantauzzo, also back, modern Middle East expert, history prof at MUN. So the answer to this question, guys, could have probably changed 18 times over the course of this week. But which story out there right now is kind of living in your heads rent-free this morning?
Greenland.
Greenland.
Yeah. I mean, I know, that's so yesterday. And Tuesday.
It was 18 hours ago.
But yeah, just because in terms of Greenland, suddenly with the seeming success of the strategy in Venezuela, we got a number of people coming out talking about Greenland. Steve Miller, particularly, the assistant chief of staff in the White House, and I can talk more about what he was saying later on, maybe. But the thing with Greenland is that is really upping the ante.
Yeah.
Action on that, and the fact that you don't rule out military action, and that against another NATO member. I suspect that that's the reason why it probably won't happen, because it's a step too far. But, knowing this sort of chaotic White House, if something did happen with Greenland, that would be monumental.
Yeah, I mean, and yes, it's one of those things where you look around and it's like, oh, well, I guess that ends NATO, and then a bunch of question marks on the world order and everything else. Justin, what's living in your head rent free this morning?
Well, I'll be even more passé than Luke, and I'll stick with Venezuela.
Oh, the OG story of the week,
the Sunday story,
the classic story.
The classic story.
Way back.
I'll stick with Venezuela, but with a nod, which I'm sure we'll get to today, to an evolving situation in the Middle East that is kind of flying under the radar right now. That is diplomatic relations, recognition of Somaliland by Israel, which will have major geostrategic consequences for the Red Sea, Horn of Africa area. And additionally, what's been reported to be really progressive talks between Syria and Israel as well. So those are the kind of 2, 3, but Venezuela by far in the lead.
And I will say, folks, when we do these State of the World shows, we do make jokes, but I know sometimes that things are dark. But at the same time, as on the professor side of it, on the journalism side, sometimes it's the jokes that pull you through.
you need that to get over the really honestly, nasty parts.
And the hard bits, yes, we will be talking about things that are, everything's really serious. It's economies, it's lives, it's individuals at stake. So we will give that the due weight. But at the same time, when you do hear jokes, it's just so we can get through the hour talking. About
I'm waiting to hear what you've got in your back pocket now.
I did.
What are we bracing for?
Speaking of which, which I said just before the show, it's the Steve Colbert line about speaking of Venezuela, and because we were talking, and Luke, what was your line about Americans learning about?
Yeah,
geography?
that it's an old joke that war is God's way of teaching Americans geography.
Yes, and then also I mentioned, well, I was watching Stephen Colbert a clip from it the other night, and he said, 2/3 of folks in the States think that Maduro is actually a weight loss drug. So there you go.
Yeah.
A bit of humor off the top. When I got in touch with you guys, I mean, we'll pick through the news, and then folks, as you're listening, like the lines are open, text line, email, if you want to call in. I know there's a couple of folks who will be calling us today, to talk about the situation in Iran. That's on tap for today. And also someone who wrote an op-ed for the Muse will be getting in touch with, and that is on our Prime Minister, Mark Carney's response to and how he's tackling Venezuela and all of that. So that's kind of coming. In 1998, Ian Bremmer founded something called the Eurasia Group, right? So this is a firm that was devoted to helping investors, business decision makers understand the impacts of politics on the risks and opportunities in foreign markets. So like this thing really ramped up. They've got offices all around the world, and each year they put out like the top risks. For example, last year, it was something called the G0 wins. So this is the danger of a G0 world, an era where no one power or group of powers is both willing and able to drive the global agenda and maintain international order. That global leadership deficit is growing critically dangerous. That was their top risk last year. And so that means like the weight of the UN, the international, all these big international organizations, plus, you look at NATO, other things, losing their influence and weight. And I think, you look at the last year, okay, sure, that kind of makes sense. This year, the number one risk from the firm that was supposed to tell American companies about risks around the world, they're looking at themselves in the mirror. This year, the number one risk is U.S. political revolution. Trump is attempting to dismantle checks on his power, capture the machinery of government, and weaponize it against his enemies, making the United States the principal source of global risk in 2026. So that's from Eurasia Group, Ian Bremmer. I will say, listen to Front Burner if you like your podcasts, folks, because Jerry Butts was on there. He's with the Eurasia Group now. You'd probably recognize him as a former advisor to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Really interesting chat. He dives into it. But for you guys there, that top risk, even last year when you were on, I didn't think we would be to this point where we would be talking about this today.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's two competing thoughts in my head. One is looking back and going, wow. The other one, though, equal and opposite, is yes. And it's
really
just really tells us what 2025 was like. That isn't a controversial statement. I don't know what you think about that, Justin. But
I think the group might have changed the number one concern too quickly. I mean, I would have gone for kind of G0 redux myself.
Yeah.
I mean, the two are kind of intertwined, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
of
when we're
course they are,
talking
yeah.
about a kind of political revolution or fundamental restructuring of American power, either domestic or foreign, it has a dramatic impact on what has largely, I think Luke would agree, largely been a unipolar world in terms of the projection of state power. I mean, the United States has driven the agenda for much of world politics, at least since 1991, the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Arguably before that as well, with few exceptions in the world, where the Soviets had more diplomatic influence, certain parts of the Middle East, certain parts of Africa, certain parts of Central and South America.
Yeah, when I grew up, there were two superpowers.
yes.
In principle.
In principle. And then that really did change.
And that really did change. And what we're still continuing to see is not only a reformation of internal politics in the United States, as a result of the Trump administration's vision, whatever that may be, for American governance. But again, a kind of fundamental restructuring of America's role on the world stage.
Yeah.
We've talked about for a long time, and the Trump administration is not unique in saying, moving forward, can the United States continue to be the global policeman? Do they want to be the global policeman? Is it economically feasible to continue to play that role? And that's an argument that, if our listeners remember, has not only been made on the kind of America first, make America great right wing of American politics. It's an argument that also has resonated significantly on the American left. I mean, parts of Bernie Sanders' platform in the previous election, as it related to foreign policy, had a lot of synergy with the Trump administration. Kind of non-interventionism, rolling back from overseas commitments, not involving themselves in foreign, in regime change or foreign wars. There's a kind of coalescence between the left and the right's vision, it seems, as to what America's, responsibilities are. We've seen that in the way that the United States has intervened in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. At times, at least under the Trump administration, giving, I think, far more leeway to Russia than other administrations would have. We've seen that again on Sunday of this week, where the Don Roe doctrine, as we're now apparently calling it, right?
Yes.
The Americans are at least seemingly more willing to exercise an aggressive interventionist foreign policy in the Western Hemisphere. But what's the end goal of all of this? I mean, what does this mean for the American projection of power over the next 5 to 10 years? That's, I think, more open to question, Luke.
There's another aspect to that, because you're right. I agree with you on that one. But there's two parts to this, and I think you covered the first part really well, which is that it's about the U.S. no longer becoming a global power. And I think this is something quite important about what's going on here, is that this is actually American decline. It's voluntary decline. And stopping to being, the global policeman. And I think, Justin, you're absolutely right. That has resonances on both the right and the left in the US. But there's another element to this, which is, and this is where the Trump administration is adding something new, is the desire to be a powerful regional power. And there are implications we can talk about on this one, because when it's a global power, the US may act hypocritically, but it's pushing an order, and it's a leader of a coalition. It's showing sort of global leadership, particularly in the political economy. But when it becomes a regional power, when it starts modeling itself on Putin's Russia and starts doing might is right policies,
and by the way, pulling back, removing money from US aid and other things too.
Indeed.
So all the good stuff they put out for
all
decades
that
and decades
stuff is
right?
gone. Yeah.
So now you're just doing the force.
Absolutely, you're turning yourself deliberately into a sort of mirror image of the kind of a regional power that is no longer trying to push an ideology, is trying to push pure power in your region. And that has implications for Canada. It turns Canada from a kind of punch above its weight junior partner into a potential victim.
Well, yeah, I mean, all it is like Greenland's always been that big blob there on the map, right? So it's easy to know what it is. And then you're like, oh, wait, they've got resources there and all, it's kind of close to Russia. All he has to do is look left and learn the names of those places, and there could be trouble.
The interesting thing historically about Greenland, and this is a point that I think applies to Luke's comments here as well, is that this kind of retrenchment or voluntary decline, which I think is a great way of putting it. I mean, this is the United States do not have to retreat from their global position. They're choosing to retreat from their global
100%.
Yeah, they're choosing to retreat from their global position for a number of reasons. Some sensible, some maybe not. The Greenland issue is one that, again, is not necessarily a new one. It's probably new to most of our listeners. It sounds new. But ever since the Second World War, there were major discussions between the United States and Denmark about Greenland. At that time, the context was considerably different, right? It was part of the discussion of the initial establishment of NATO.
That's why there's bases on Greenland.
That's right, right? Yeah. I mean, we're talking Arctic Circle. And what's on the other side of that Arctic Circle? Russia, and previously that was the Soviet Union. So Greenland's long factored into American foreign policy thinking and ideas about transatlantic security. What's different here is the openness, I think, with which the Trump administration articulates their desire to annex, incorporate, territorialize Greenland. And as Luke mentioned earlier, the suggestion that, a hostile takeover, whatever that would look like, hostile takeover is somehow on the table.
By a self-governed territory that's administered by the Danes. Right?
That's right, yeah.
That's it.
Right. We got a caller, and we got two people on the line. So we'll go, Shayna Lerman's on from Deer Lake. Hey, how you doing?
Well, how am I doing? I'm going to try to make a joke because this is all so miserably serious and horrible. to do this discussion, I feel like I've come into a buffet where all the food is soggy and most of the platters are empty. That's the best I can come up with.
Hey, look, I appreciate that, and I think you're hitting us where we are. You're meeting us at the level we are at today as well. So go for it.
Oh my! I mean, where do you start? One comment I want to make has to do with the murder of an innocent bystander sitting in her own car yesterday in Minneapolis, and what that tells us about the kind of military that Trump is building for himself, and it truly is himself and his buddies. I've noticed over the past however many months that ICE has been terrorizing people and just randomly picking people off the street and sending them either to countries they don't belong to or sitting them in some kind of horrible jail. But it seems to me the kind of people that's been recruited just based on observing their behavior are people who seem to be, well, may I say they might have been bouncers at bars, people who seem to have no trouble creating violence, seem to enjoy terrorizing people, which, again, makes for a very different kind of military monitoring the American people. I mean, really turning the weaponry against their own citizens. And I can't help but think, and I know history isn't popular these days, but the whole thing about the 1930s and the different pieces that we are now observing through Trump and the crowd he likes to hang around with, different pieces of fascism, totalitarianism, dictatorship, falling into place bit by piece. And it's terrifying. It is.
No, and I mean, I think a lot of people will feel, your thoughts will echo with their feelings as well on this. I'm just looking at cbc.ca/news right now. The top story: anger in Minneapolis after fatal shooting of a woman by ICE officer. On the New York Times, videos contradict Trump administration account of ICE shooting in Minneapolis. An analysis of footage from 3 camera angles shows that the vehicle appears to be turning away from a federal officer as he opened fire. So, folks, if you don't know the story, put in Minneapolis and shooting. You can find it online. Shayna, thanks for talking about your concern, what's occupying your thoughts today in international news. I appreciate you always calling.
Thanks for taking my call.
Before we go back to the guys in studio, we have David Rowe on the line, who's a university student. He wrote a piece in The Muse titled Carney Week on Trump's illegal aggression on Venezuela. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, look, I saw it yesterday, and where we were doing this show, I figured I'd reach out and just kind of tell me your thought. Like, I read the title or the headline. Tell us a bit more of why you did it and what your points were on it, your thoughts on it.
So, like I'm sure a lot of people, after the operation that the U.S. carried out in Venezuela, where they bombed the capital as well as captured or kidnapped, depending on your perspective, the president of the country, Nicolas Maduro. As global news, it was on all of our minds. And as a student of political science and international relations, it was already something of great interest to me and a situation I've been following for a long time, specifically with the boat bombings that the U.S. military had been carrying out in the Caribbean, where they were targeting boats leaving Venezuela under the claim that these were boats trafficking drugs into the U.S. And from a more Canadian perspective, when I saw the Prime Minister's comments on it, I was personally disappointed. Carney, in my view, has long been an advocate of international law, as is customary in Canadian politics. Canada on the world stage is often a large proponent of international law. And I think that we recognize that as a smaller nation, population-wise, and also in terms of our military force, it is in our best interest to not want to live in a world where, quote-unquote, might makes right, which is, just the idea that powerful states can kind of do whatever they want so long as they have the ability to do so. And I just felt like his comment was solely focusing on the idea of Maduro as a dictator and autocrat, which is not something I would argue. But if you have any knowledge of international law, it's not the business of the United States or any other country to go around toppling any regime which they deem to be a bad actor. And again, as a smaller nation like Canada, even if we may not feel ourselves to be direct threats, I just feel like any violation of international law, this brazen, puts our own sovereignty at least in question.
So do you think there's, for the Prime Minister, for trying to thread a needle on not wanting to poke the bear when there's tariffs and wondering also about our own territory at 51st state comments and everything else, but then at the same time looking at what is happening, talking about Venezuela, its people, the removal of Maduro, and then you're looking at Anita Anand and the Governor General are going to visit Greenland in February to open a Canadian consulate. Do you think something like that may speak in a softer tone around international law and who we stand up for? Like, do you think there's any wiggle room for the Prime Minister for trying to thread the needle?
I do, and I will say I do respect his position. It's a very delicate situation and not one that I'm sure any or many of us envy to be in. But I do feel like on some level, if we, and not just Canada, but other European nations and other NATO members had similar reactions, I feel like when we continue to play soft with the Trump administration's actions such as this, it just emboldens them further. I mean, we see in the wake of this Venezuela operation how this rhetoric around Greenland has ramped up again. And personally, I don't think that's a coincidence. You know, they had been talking about this before they were even inaugurated and, at the start of the administration, but it kind of died down as it wasn't too popular and a lot of NATO members really pushed back. But I think in the wake of this operation in Venezuela, where you had a tepid response and, Canada and other NATO and European allies at the most had tepid criticism, but were mostly okay with what the U.S. did. And I understand that, Carney and other European leaders find themselves in a position where they have to thread the needle. But at the same time, if we're going to go soft on these type of actions, I believe is only going to embolden them to further encroach on the sovereignty of other nations.
David Rowe, thanks so much for talking about your piece in the Muse. I appreciate you taking time to come on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Cheers. David Rowe there.
Cheers.
So you can find that piece in the Muse. Just check it out online. So guys, Luke, Justin, thoughts on what David's saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's. He's touched on an important issue, and in some respects, and I like the way he was also feeling some certain amount of sympathy as
for
well,
the position,
criticizing, and I think that was a good balance. I think what Carney is facing is very similar to also what European leaders are facing, and they are equally being criticized for lack of saying things. And it's interesting to see the muted response to what happened in Venezuela. Some of that muted response is linked to the issue that, yes, the Maduro regime wasn't a particularly nice regime. But, of course, that's balanced out by the point, and I think he made it well there, that, of course, this is likely in violation of the UN Charter, even though it was very limited. It's still maybe in violation. But it is interesting that they pivoted straight to Greenland after that, because that's something where the European leaders feel that they can stand up to Trump. And particularly with the meeting in Paris and then the meeting that followed yesterday between the French, German, and Polish foreign ministers as well.
Yeah.
So you have that kind of balance, but they're all trying to be simultaneously Trump whisperers and sort of lead him on, while at the same time trying to stand up and go, whoa, when he overreaches. But getting that balance right is well nigh to impossible, I think.
Almost impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah, almost impossible, with the exception of some heads of state in Europe who, if we want to call them Trump whisperers or sycophants or certainly sympathetic to the Trump vision of world politics. I'm thinking Viktor Orban in Hungary, the Prime Minister of Finland, even others as well. The United States, I don't think is going to have too much trouble putting together a kind of coalition of the willing. I guess you might say, or a coalition of the tolerant, maybe is a better way of putting it now. I think the Venezuela issue I think this is, and this is just my opinion, obviously, I think this is a lot trickier than some people think it is or would like it perhaps to be. Like Luke said, I mean, there's no question that the operation in Caracas almost certainly violates the UN Charter. There seems to be, from what I've read, more or less consensus, I'll say, on whether or not this violates American constitutional law. And that's a little trickier. What presidential powers the president can exert constitutionally hasn't always, probably will continue to be a matter of debate.
Yeah, and the Republicans are also saying, well, this was a law enforcement operation. Granted, that killed a few dozen people or more, right? But this is
the reports say up to maybe 80 now, right?
Exactly.
But there's also other mechanisms that fall under presidential powers that are even beyond whether or not it's a law enforcement mechanism that allow the president to take military action if the United States is perceived to be facing a threat, and what constitutes a threat is very broadly defined.
Yeah, and when you have a guy who just, if there's a norm, it's been broken, right? So if you don't care about that, then and we're seeing this out of Donald Trump.
Yeah, and I think putting aside, not that they're unimportant, but putting aside the legal questions, it seems like most of the political response globally, to me, agrees, as David pointed out in the call, that Maduro probably had to go. Probably had to go. And that certainly his removal from power will almost certainly be a good thing for South America and for global security and politics as well. There are aspects of the Maduro regime that we could talk about today that have links to Iran, to Hezbollah, to China, that not if you're taking a might versus right position, but if you are a somewhat unipolar power in the Western Hemisphere, you probably don't want to tolerate. And I can understand that from a geopolitical perspective. The question then becomes, well, how do you remove Maduro? So if you start with the assumption that he probably should go, okay, how do you get rid of him, though? And I think this is where we've seen a discrepancy between the response of Venezuelans, particularly those in exile in the diaspora, and the response of those who are dissociated from the real day-to-day impact of the Maduro regime and are more concerned about things like international law and the appearance of security and global cooperation. This is a regime that since 2013 has been rigging elections or ignoring elections, suppressing political opposition, has created a migrant crisis of 8 million Venezuelans, which, by the way, is about 25 to 30% of the country has fled the regime. Was investigated in 2018 by the United Nations Human Rights Office for crimes against humanity, is unquestioned. Sure, the Trump administration is overplaying the narco-terrorist angle.
By a
lot. Particularly the fentanyl part.
Yeah.
Right? The cocaine part and the other aspects of drug trafficking, maybe not. Maybe not. The links between the Venezuelan government and the Maduro regime and Hezbollah, for example, are not only made by the Trump administration, but by independent researchers and academics and international organizations as well. The point that I'm trying to make here is, how was he to go, though? How was he to go other than by direct intervention in whatever form that may or may not have taken? I mean, the 2024 election, the popular vote was 70% in support of Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the kind of stand-in candidate for Maria Corina Machado, who is the opposition leader in exile. That didn't change things. A migrant crisis hasn't changed things. Significant U.S. economic pressure and sanctions haven't changed things.
But now we have a position where the vice president's now the president. There's reporting of increased crackdowns on folks. And then you've got the president of the United States being like, well, the world's largest oil reserve, we want to start using it. And what does that have to do with anything that, then to look in the larger bit of who's next, how's next, and then Greenland is next on the list. I think that's some of the bigger worry, too, which I know you know.
Yeah.
All of those are true.
Yeah.
It's true that it's a dangerous norm breaking. It's true that we are dealing with a regime that was human rights abuses. The election was almost certainly rigged, going back to what Justin was saying. And also they are crassly incompetent. So all of these things are true. It's also true that it's kind of that you've got this strange chaotic situation in the White House where from the White House, we're getting 2, 3, 4 different justifications for it.
Sometimes in the same press conference.
Sometimes that's it. It was one of them was in the same press
what
conference.
Trump would say and then what Rubio would step in and say was.
So, you know, if you're the Colombian president, you're looking at this and going, oh, my God, this is back to the Uncle Sam's backyard, bad old days of the 50s
Well,
and 60s.
and then you get
but if you're a Venezuelan opposition and pro-democracy activist, you're looking at this like Maria Corina Machado, you're looking at this going, well, this is an opportunity.
Well, then you had the threat to the Colombian president. I know he's talked to Trump since, but to watch your Alpha Sierra,
That's it.
right? And then also there's if I was the Cuban government right now, I'd be nervous. So it's like...
This is it. All of these things are true. And there have been dedemonstrations in Colombia.
And this might be part of a kind of larger geopolitical play as well, a long-term one, the objective of which none of us know.
Totally.
Maybe Trump himself doesn't know either. But, you know... There's been lots of reporting as well that with effectively the fall of the Maduro regime, although as you pointed out rightly, Adam, I mean, not really.
The regime hasn't fallen.
The regime has not fallen. The figurehead has been removed, but the apparatus remains, and that is part of the problem here. But some of the kind of analysis as well is that a transition of Venezuela to democracy will put serious pressure on Cuba now. Because Cuba has been benefiting for a significant amount of time effectively by getting free Venezuelan oil in support in exchange for the support of Cuban intelligence services keeping the Maduro regime in power.
And Cuba cost of living crisis, economic free fall right now, right?
Just like Venezuela. I mean, since the Maduro regime took power, Venezuela's GDP has contracted by 80%. 90% of the country experiences what would be defined as poverty, and inflation is at 130,000%. I mean, that all drives a quarter of a country to leave.
That is the incompetence.
That's the incompetence part, right? I mean, and that is aside from the extrajudicial killings, the imprisonments, the torture, the election rigging. I mean, that's just
all the human rights abuses.
All the human rights abuses and violations. And that's where I'd like to see the United States and the Trump administration push more, on those issues. So to say, speaking the language of liberty, as they often used to at least do, because the thing that's not getting talked about enough, I think, is the oil argument is actually a pretty flimsy one. Like whoever is in Trump's ear, perhaps telling him this is a great oil opportunity, is not looking at world oil markets.
Yeah.
No.
Right? I mean, it's not a good time to be in the oil business. Whether or not there's massive reserves of heavy sour crude or not that are going to take tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars
because of the talk of the plateau that's supposed to be coming still, like depending, was it 2035, when is this happening? And where, like for oil for like China, Europe, as they increasingly try to electrify, what is the state of selling oil 10 years from now, 15 years from now?
Just a sort of a figure that has been bandied around, I think the BBC used it, or was it The Guardian? But anyway, was one estimate has that $185 billion would have to be spent over the next 14 years to bring Venezuelan oil production up to the level that it was.
Yeah,
and that's an enormous investment.
Let me go over
and time.
I've been ignoring the call sheet. So this Saturday, the Iranian diaspora is holding a protest in solidarity with friends, family, and their country in St. John's. On the line, we have a PhD student in humanities at Memorial University, Jalal Afzal. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Tell folks, give folks, I mentioned a protest in solidarity, and we've spoken about Iran when we've done shows like this before, but just tell us your understanding of what is happening right now in Iran.
Okay. First and foremost, thank you for this opportunity and thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on.
That's really a tough question because the events are moving very quickly right now and the information are coming out from Iran by minutes. But if I want to summarize the broader picture, it goes beyond a protest or a temporary uprising. It's really a revolution right now in Iran. And to give a sense of how immediate things are, right now it's 12:39 here, and we are 7 hours behind the time zone in Tehran. There is a call for action, a nationwide call for action for 20 minutes from now.
Right.
And we are expecting people to come out or even stay safe in their houses and chant through their windows. That's how fast things are happening right now.
Right. And
But
this,
it's a revolution.
yeah, and this is, so I mean, these nationwide protests, it's like, and correct me on this. This is me reading from some notes from the Associated Press, and Justin, feel free, and Luke, to jump in as well. But for the Republic's ailing economy, putting pressure on the theocracy, you had Tehran reeling from a 12-day war launched by Israel in June that saw the United States bomb sites. You've got, Iran has described itself as an axis of resistance. There's a lot happening, and with the cost of living crisis, with people being fed up, this is not the first time people have gone to the streets. There have been crackdowns before, and now, but this is, like you're saying revolution. This is a very powerful movement of the people, which is why you folks, friends and the diaspora outside of Iran, are going to show solidarity.
That's correct. We have several uprisings in past 3 decades, and I've been involved in most of them.
Okay.
This time we know this time is different. It started with some sort of strike in Grand Bazaar in Tehran, but in less than few hours, it's really turned to something else. It turned to the quest for overthrowing the Islamic Republic, this theocracy, the current system. And this is different this time. I'm saying different because in previous protests and uprisings, people were chanting what they didn't want. We all said we don't want Islamic Republic. But now they are saying what they want. They are calling for now the chants, if you have heard about them, they are chanting and calling Crown Prince in exile, Reza Pahlavi. And they ask him to return, not to restore the constitutional monarchy we had before 1979 revolution, but ask him for, as a trusted person, as a loyal person to nationality of Iranians, to come and lead this revolution and lead this transition to a peaceful transition through democracy, a democracy which, if I try to quote Reza Pahlavi himself, is based on secular democracy, based on human rights and territorial integrity, and the most importantly, the people will be deciding which form of government will be in the future, be it a monarchy, a constitutional monarchy like what we have here in Canada, or a democratic republic, whatever. It will be decided after that. But for now, what's happening is there is a revolution, and the people know what they want right now.
Tell us the details for Saturday, for the gathering.
On Saturday, we are a group of Iranian here, mostly students and their family. We call ourselves Iranian constitutional monarchists, but we are not going to talk about the future. As Reza Pahlavi himself always says, we are not going to put the cart in front of the horse. We are just gathering together to show our community what is going on in Iran. And we are going to chant exactly the same things that the people in Iran are chanting. Things like, long live the king, or this is the final battle, Pahlavi will return. These are the chants we are hearing everywhere in Iran. And as I said before, it doesn't mean that they are already voting for constitutional monarchy. This is the way that they are showing to the world that we have a leader right now, and there will not be a chaos after this revolution. We are trying to share these things with our community here in St. John's.
And I've got and it's Saturday, the 10th, from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m., St. John's City Hall. And as you said, in solidarity with the people of Iran. Jalal Afzal, thank you so much for just talking about your thoughts, your experience, speaking for the group, some of the Iranian diaspora here, and sharing all of that with us.
Thank you. I just wanted to add a very short thing at the end.
Yep.
I know maybe some of your listeners think that how is it related to Canadians, something that is happening thousands of miles away. Just today, January 8th, is the 6th anniversary of this Ukrainian international airplane PS-572.
Yes.
That was shot down by two missiles by Revolutionary Guards of Iran. And in that airplane, 176 people were killed. 52 of them were Canadian citizens, and 30 of them were Canadian permanent residents. It means a regime like Islamic Republic in Iran, they are not contained in the borders of Iran. They are a danger to all the, I'm not telling the universe, but they are really a danger to everyone.
Thanks for that final point. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
Thanks,
Thank
Jalal.
you so much.
All right. So there you go. So we've got 3 callers and a text to get to, but quickly, guys, just thoughts on what Jalal was saying about Iran, Justin.
Well, Jalal's spot on. I mean, I think and hope I'm like many other people in the sense that I support the revolution in Iran, and I hope that there can be a peaceful transition towards whatever future the Iranian people want for themselves, whether that's a constitutional monarchy or a democratic Republican government, as Jalal said, whichever. I'm surprised to hear the extent to which Iranian protesters are invoking the Pahlavi past. I mean, it is a contested one. There was a revolution in 1979 in part for a reason. It is a contested one, and Pahlavi himself, against his father, to be fair, this Pahlavi, has not spent any time really living in Iran. He's an exiled figurehead, but not one who has much, if any, experience in Iran with the Iranian people themselves. That's not to say that he can't be, and maybe that's a good thing, frankly.
Yeah.
That's not to say that he can't be that figurehead, like Jalal said, to which the country and the protesters rally around, a vision for a different, better Iran. An Iran which is not a global threat, a regional threat, or an Iran that can make peace with Israel, an Iran that will stop, trying to expand its geopolitical influence in Syria and Lebanon, in the Palestinian territories, in Yemen, and so on and so forth. I am surprised, though, to hear how much Pahlavi is figuring in these protests. I'm sure he loves that.
Yeah.
He's for a very long time positioned himself as the kind of natural transitionary figurehead. But I am surprised to hear the public digesting that message and at least chanting it.
Luke, quick thought for you before we go back to the calls.
I was just going to say that this has been building for a long time now. We've had a series of very powerful protests, and the resistance is growing in Iran. And I'd just like to say, that this is, again, if we're talking about kind of living in a democratic recession, this really shows us the nature of authoritarian regimes like in Iran is that they are actually very brittle and very short-term thinking. And they seem to be powerful, and they seem to just not be going anywhere, not shifting at all. Then suddenly, bam, as happened in 79 with the Shah's regime, they splinter, they collapse. So something could happen in Iran at any moment.
Yeah, and then, as we've talked about before in the show, for democracy, it takes a lot of work to keep it healthy. Let's go. Daryl's on the line from Gander. Daryl, how you doing?
Oh, good. And yourself?
Good.
Thanks for having me on your show. And you're
of course.
addressing a lot of good issues there, as usual. But what I want to bring to the forefront is that pertaining to President Trump, what's happening with the media and all that stuff, we're feeding them because Donald Trump said, okay, we're going to take over Greenland, even though they're all part of NATO, which in actual essence, it's not going to happen because they're going over there next week to talk to them about putting a consulate there in Greenland. But the more you talk about it, like he'll throw stuff out to the media, and people are grabbing onto it. So the more you talk about it, the more you're feeding them. So sometimes, in some cases, you're better off ignoring his remarks, because if you do, then all of a sudden it just goes away. But what he's doing now, he's just feeding people, and media and everybody is grabbing onto it and keep talking about it, and that's what he's thriving on. So maybe sometimes, in some cases, important issues got to be addressed, But in other issues, okay, if he says something about Greenland, whatever, sometimes I wouldn't talk about it much because it's part of NATO, and I don't. It's not going to happen. So just what we got to start looking at and put things in perspective, because you'll wake up and you'll put something on the media, and everybody goes crazy about it. So this is what we got to start looking at, other avenues to deal with things as well.
Great point. And I mean, I think that was for Trump 1.0, that was some of the criticism levied against some of the American networks for any time he started to talk, they would go live. And there was criticism around that kind of giving him a boost back then. And now here we are today. Any final thought before I let you go, Daryl?
Yeah, and you're right what you just said there, but all you look at all the news networks here in Canada, the same thing. As soon as you turn on all different ones, same thing. They're doing the same thing as the U.S. network. So sometimes you could probably bring it up moderation and then forget it because if he thrives on this stuff, so we keep doing this, you're going to start getting more and more of this stuff happening. So to curtail it, sometimes you better have to ignore it, and then it drifts away.
Thanks as always for the call.
All right. Thank you for having me on your show, and all the best to you and your guests and staff at CBC and your listening audience. Have a great finish to your day.
You too, sir. I'll keep whipping through before I go back to my guests. Craig Lewis is on the line from Bay Vert. How you doing?
Good. Thanks, guys. First of all, our leaders need to get a backbone. Trump went down and he blew up that first boat. And what did the United Nations do? Nothing.
Yeah.
What did he do on the 15th one? Nothing. They should have been down there telling him that what he was doing was illegal and that the United Nations as a whole for humanity is standing together up against this. Unfortunately, we have systems that have been put in place by elitists. The UN, the NATO, the IMF, the World Economic Forum, all of these groups have been forced upon governments, and the governments are being bought into these systems, bribed. And now we just sent, $20-something billion to Ukraine, and Kathy Freeland is going to go over there and manage all that. She shouldn't be responsible for $1. This is how we do it now. We talk about how corrupt the politics are in Venezuela. We got it all over the world, here in Canada, too. So we need to start cleaning up our act, get some backbone, and start telling Trump that he cannot be doing what he's doing. You know, if we don't stand up, the world is going to end. It's getting worse by the year.
No.
And everybody is going along with it. Mass media and its propaganda productions and allowing this to happen in our society today is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, Craig, go ahead.
The world was up in protest before COVID. COVID was pre-planned, and it happened. And now look at the state of the world. And now that the world's populations are up in arms again, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah, there's a lot to think about there, Craig. I got to get to my final two callers and get back to my guests before the show is over. But as always, I appreciate your thoughts and your feelings on this because it's quite the times we're living in.
It is. Thank you very much, Adam. Have a great day.
Thanks. All right, Craig calling there from Bay Vert. Two more, and then I'll get back to my guests. So a minute each, folks. Johnny, a minute for your thoughts that you're going to bring up. Johnny calling from St. John's. Hello.
Hey, just a quick one.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up the thought that okay, Trump went in and took out Maduro, illegally and all of this, but the idea of what your guest said about how else would it happen? And yet he can say, in Iran, these lack of democracies, they will fall, they'll splinter. And so why was that the case there? Why could we give them the opportunity to actually have the people make such a decision? That's one thing. And the other thing I just wanted to mention and ask about, because I always wonder what people think about this, is sure, this whole idea of the fact that, yes, Maduro, I'm not pro-Maduro, is doing a bad job, absolutely. But what about the crippling sanctions from the U.S. and the crippling sanctions against Cuba and how these are causing, mass death and mass starvation in these places? How can we not reconcile that impact?
Excellent points. I'm going to have to let you go. I'm going to go to Patrick and then back to my guests to try to give them time to respond. Patrick, you've got under 60 seconds to make a quick point, if you could, please.
That's all I need. I'm here for a message of positivity today. There will be no hostile takeover of Greenland. Canada will not be the 51st state. Everything is going to be fine. Greenland will probably, be through like a more democratic way, be brought into the warm fold of the United States, but this is all just the path that we have always been marking on. Not to get too conspiratorial, but 4 years ago, Chuck Schumer with the Democratic Party, he wanted Moderno out, and now Trump's got him out. And then when the Democrats eventually get in, there's not going to be any change. It's just going to be, Venezuela is where it is, and this is the way that it was always going to be. So
more of the same, thank you. More of the same, just a different type of wrapping. Thank you, Patrick, for that. I appreciate it. All right, guys, we got 4 minutes left. Who lots there. Who wants to go? Justin.
I'll try to respond really quickly here. First, about the United Nations needing to grow a backbone and the international community and step in. We've had this kind of comment before, and I understand it. I mean, I feel the same way oftentimes as well. I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding sometimes, though, again, about what some of these international organizations are designed to do and what they have the capacity to do. They are not peacemaking organizations. They have no mandate by international law to go into places and institute peace or dictate peace. UN resolutions are not authorized to use force in those kinds of cases. So, I mean, if that's something that as an international global community we want to change, I mean, that will require a lot of time and discussion, but they're just not built to do that. To respond to the caller about the comparison between, I think the kind of thought-provoking comparison between Iran and Venezuela. I think the difference is that in Venezuela, the Venezuelan people have tried everything. They've, elected new governments. They've protested. They've left. They've et cetera. And it's met with repression often by the military. And I think this is a big difference between Iran and Venezuela, and one that we often forget, particularly when we're dealing with Latin America, which is a different ballgame than the Middle East. Like, who controls the military is a major factor in how these kinds of transitions of power take place. The Venezuelan people have tried, just as the Iranian people have tried, and both have been oppressed, particularly by those regimes and the military. To add on to that very briefly, why can the United States do this in Venezuela and not something like Iran, or why would they consider it? I mean, look, this is pragmatic regional politics. You can do it in Iran because you can do it in Iran. Venezuela. If you try to do that in Iran, it's a much more complicated situation, or trying to engage in regime change in Iran. It's much different. It's not the 1950s anymore.
And I'll throw this out to Luke, too. It's a choose your own adventure. Someone wrote in, another casualty of the New World Disorder will be nuclear non-proliferation. At least a dozen countries have the capability to build nuclear weapons, but have chosen not to, trusting the American nuclear umbrella. So with that text, I'm thinking Japan, South Korea, which they've talked about this, right? So you can go there or wherever else you want.
Absolutely. But maybe guess, because I think
we got like a minute and a half.
We've got very little time, but I think that's a really good point. Is that there's, when you pull out the threads of the global order, lots of other things fall apart. Trump administration recently pulled out of 66 international organizations, but quite right. We also got the issue that this is going to have serious implications for the balance of terror and for issues around nuclear weapons and nuclear defense. So, 100%. Watch this space.
So then in the final 30 seconds, how are we feeling about the year ahead? Because it feels like it's been a year already and we're 1 week into 2026.
Well, to paraphrase an old joke from Hungary, 2026 may be worse than 2025, but at least it'll be better than 2027.
I like that. Captivating.
Yeah.
I feel captivated by 2026 already for all the wrong and some of the right reasons.
Lots to watch, wonder, worry about, read about, try to pay attention. Guys, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, that is it for today's show. Thanks for the calls, the texts, the emails, the signal at cbc.ca. Now, tomorrow, something completely different. You deserve a break from the headlines. It's been quite the week. Tomorrow, it's Trivia Day with John Gushu. We are going to give away a reading package, and we're not going to talk about the news headlines at all. Like 55 full minutes of stress-free radio, where the only thing that is stressful is trying to figure out the big old questions John's asking. Typically, it's about pop culture or a little bit of history. That's tomorrow. Don't miss it. Thanks for listening, folks. Cheers.